Hi, everybody. This is Adam Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology, and these are your horoscopes for the month of May 2019. So this is your Sun and Rising sign horoscope for Aquarius. Forget where I am. Aquarians, how are you doing? Here we go. Get your chart in the right place. All right. So the beginning of the month is really stacked with a lot of action. This is true for everybody. Everything's really focused on Mercury. You can see this because Mercury in Aries is in your third house, making a square to Saturn, South Node, and Pluto between May 1st and May 3rd, while there is also a trine happening to Jupiter in Sagittarius in the 11th house, and while there is also a sextile happening with Mars and Gemini, creating a mutual reception in your 5th house. That's a lot, right? Just in 3 days? Okay, so first 3 days really packs a punch. Now, what can you expect from this? First of all, this is Mercury in the third house, which is related to the mind. So we have a super mental focus right now for most signs this month. But mental, intellectual, communicative, decisions that are of consequence. With the 12th house Saturn, South Node, and Pluto, you have to be very careful about making decisions that are just a little dumb. I'm saying that in all compassion and kindness because I'm sure that there are many of you that this will not apply to. But there are going to be some Aquarians this month with a very kind of fierce, principled, rigid, maybe a little bit more impulsive and reckless, maybe even angry spirit, making decisions, sometimes feeling like the outcast or sometimes feeling like nobody understands or whatever the case might be, and making decisions that are going to get you in trouble. This is because Saturn, South Node, and Pluto in the 12th house can be very self-destructive. And the Mercury here is very combative, very martial, very adversarial. It's very smart, intelligent, very analytical. If you're trying to solve problems or get to the bottom of something and make hard choices, good. If you're trying to analyze or study something in solitude, maybe good. If you're trying to understand real motivations and real intentions, getting below the surface of things with sober, serious, focused, disciplined thinking, good. If you are trying to make snap decisions based on quick judgments, based on reactions and ill temper, bad. The potential for to find allies who feel and think the same way you do, who strategize similarly, that's possible right now. But it will probably require the choices that you're making are of much more consequence. They're graver, they're more serious. The things that are on your mind, more serious. The things happening in your immediate environment, potentially more jarring and severe. That's Mercury in Aries. Then what you're looking at is so that's just the first 3 days, right? And then when you move along and you get to the new moon energy, right? You got a new moon in your 4th house this month. That's the house of home, family, foundations, and roots. A whole developmental cycle is going to be playing out in that house. And you can see that there's a little bit of kind of an erratic, exciting quality between like May 7th and 8th, even the 9th, between Mercury and Uranus in the 4th house. Right after the new moon, there's a little bit of a kind of Mercury Uranus can be very like inventive and sort of provocative, especially again mentally and intellectually. But there can be also issues around technology, wires, electrical units, and it can kind of be like unexpected sort of foundation rattling changes that come through, but also a lot of inspiration, aha moments, epiphanies. And these would somehow be related to the base of your life, what supports you, your home, family, and foundations. So maybe some little bit of shocking changes right away, right after the new moon as Mercury comes through and conjoins Uranus. But wait, there's more. You've also got some degree of philosophical combativeness around the 5th and 6th with Mars moving through an opposition to Jupiter. You can see that perfecting on the 6th, I believe it is. And then again, Mars in a very mental mercurial sign opposite Jupiter, potential for a little bravado, maybe some philosophical challenges or differences among coworkers or colleagues or within groups that you belong to, but also sometimes the feeling of a common cause or a mission that you're really sort of high on, that could be a big part of this month, which is also why you want to be careful about being too inflexible or rigid in your thinking. You might be kind of high on something this month. Now, when you're going forward to, let's see, 6th through the 10th, Venus will get involved with all of the squares. So Venus will go through squares to Saturn, South Node, Pluto. Venus will make a trine to expansive, beneficial Jupiter. Venus will start getting involved with a sextile to Mars in Gemini. So Venus, after Mercury, which is much more heady and sort of mental, communicative, etc., Venus, goddess of love and relationships, will get in on the same energy. So communication in relationships, those themes, really important. Mental energy, intellectual energy, and relationships. You can also think about Venus going through these squares from her detriment in Aries as thinking that, relationships could suffer a little bit this month because, you have some hard decisions to make and you're being more principled and less compromising. So relationships can struggle a little bit from that. Now, when you get to May 10th through the 15th, I really like this energy because during that time, you have very productive grand Earth trine forming. And that's going to happen between the moon in Virgo, sun in Taurus, and Saturn, South Node, and Pluto in the 12th house. Now, these are difficult houses. 12, 8, and 4 don't mess around. So, the changes that you're going to be making, while very productive, tangible, solid, earthy, practical, these changes are coming from a deeper place. You're looking at what, ancestral karma. You're looking at the topics of death and rebirth. You're looking at the topics of self-destructiveness, isolation, or self-undoing, but earthy. So how can I make practical, substantive changes to improve my situation? I think something very good can come out of this, but you're going to have to work deep and you have to be very real and honest with yourself. There's no dissociating mentally this month. There's a lot of practical demands that are going to be made on you. And you're going to have to hold yourself accountable for the changes that you want to make, especially with a lot of Jupiter in the 11th house. It's like you could be really, really high on something as an Aquarian this month, that you're really excited to make some changes or to move forward with something. All the while, the choices you're making could be very self-destructive and not very practical. So that's something to really keep in mind this month for Aquarians. Aquarians of all my signs this month, Aquarians are one of the ones that I have a little bit more concerns for, because there's such deep foundational changes going on. And with a 12th house emphasized, it's possible to not be clear and practical enough in your thinking about things. To act from Aquarians have such good, noble, usually reasons for doing things. Sometimes they're not always practical, or sometimes they're too principled and almost too rigid. That's something, every sign has something that we struggle with, right? But at any rate, then on May 18th, you're looking at a full moon in your career house. This is a full moon that is also in its fall, while its ruler, Mars, has just entered the 6th house in its fall. So mutual reception by debility. Very challenging placement. Something good can come out of this, but we're looking at probably a certain degree of strife, challenge, or hardship related to work or work-related issues. So not be a good time to get into feuds with coworkers. And you should, if you work in any kind of situation where you could get physically injured, be very careful. But otherwise, just know that there's a little bit more emotional turbulence around work-related matters at the time of the full moon on the 18th. Now, what I really like is that there's the opportunity for a deeper, perhaps a little deeper level of emotional healing that's available to you right after the full moon. And that's happening because Mars in Cancer in the 6th is getting into a square with Chiron, the wounded healer, in the 3rd. So some form of mental, psychological, emotional healing is possible during this time, but it's not going to happen without a little bit of conflict. I think this is true for just about every sign this month. Actually, the full moon and then the subsequent Mars Chiron spot, there's vulnerabilities and emotional confrontation that's going to come up. Going to be a little bit more volatile. We can heal and learn a lot from the experience as we go. This for you in the third house may also involve siblings. If for any reason that rings a bell, could be a part of it as well. Now, at the very end of the month, the 29th to 30th, we see the last big transit of the month, which is the, So at the very end of the month, we're going to see Mercury getting into an opposition with Jupiter from the 5th to the 11th, excuse my awful drawing, with the square to Neptune and Pisces in the second house. So this transit has a lot to do with, finances and resources in the second house, friends, groups, colleagues, benefactors in the 11th house, people that are here to help you. But the fifth house has a lot to do with joy, happiness, good fortune, children. So my sense is, because this is, again, a potentially sort of adversarial dynamic between Mercury and Jupiter with some tension from Neptune in the second house, I think what we're asking the question of is, what sacrifices or compromises are warranted and which are unnecessary or even harmful? How do I use my money or resources in a healthy way versus a way that's draining and not good, like spending too much money on alcohol, or not saving money, or spending too much money on your kids on superficial things that they don't need, or like that? Or socially, I'm aligning myself with people for superficial reasons or in order to get a leg up in the world, and it's really eating away at me because I don't feel like I can actually be myself, or things like that. So thinking about who you're surrounding yourself with, what produces real joy and happiness, and how to best spend your time, money, energy, and resources. Those kinds of topics, you're seeking like a moment of clarity, of philosophical clarity toward the end of the month around those things, but you may, once again, you may see a little bit of philosophical conflict with others as you try to arrive at your conclusions. So that's what I'm seeing around the end of the month. I think it also has the potential to be great for learning, for kind of academic learning environment, or for intuition to be very strong, dreams or messages. Also, Neptune, Mercury stuff can be pretty mystical. So end of the month should be interesting. All right, Aquarians, that's what I've got for you. I hope you have a great month of May. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Please leave your comments and stories in the feed on YouTube. I'd love to hear about them. And I look forward to talking to you again in June. Okay, take care. Bye.